Shalom to all. This is Rabbi Sachs coming to you from the Chai Center, and welcome to the Chai Academy. We have been discussing the past, I don't know, 5, 6 segments, the Holocaust. Hitler's rise to power, and Kristallnacht, and the Yellow Star. Yesterday's conversation specifically was on the pre-gas chambers, the pre-concentration camps, how the Germans inspired, the Nazis inspired the Ukrainians, the Poles, the Lithuanians, the Russians to beat up and kill Jews on whatever pretext. And literally some people were just beaten to death, not shot, but beaten. And while the Nazis, looked and observed and encouraged. However, it was not expeditious. It was not effective. It wasn't, you know, the Nazi says this is happening too slow, and will never get done. So they went to the next step, and the next step was called the final solution, and that's the topic for today. Once again, not a pleasant topic, but it must be taught, and we have to know. So first off, I'll tell you that generally speaking, really evil and sick people, they never ever see themselves as evil, right? Um, and John Wilkes Booth, the fellow that shot Abraham Lincoln, which is probably one of the greatest evil that could be done, and the effect it had on the country. So he viewed himself as a saint. He viewed himself as a tzaddik. Yeah, in his writings, as he was hiding, they caught him a couple days later. So he wrote, "I am in despair." And why? For what doing Brutus was honored for, and Tell was a hero. My actions were purer than theirs. I have too great a soul to die a criminal. John Wilkes Booth. So, just like completely evil, so Hitler too, he didn't see himself as evil, but rather he saw himself as a great benefactor. He's the man who would make things right, and he carefully chose these words: the final solution to the Jewish problem. Now, the reason why he called it final solution is because we spoke yesterday about the Ukrainians, Khmelnytsky in 1648, how Khmelnytsky, 48 and 49, the pogroms, and unbelievable. But in general, he looked at history and he says, it doesn't work. He says Christians, they tried. They tried conversion or expulsion, right? Christians tried that in Spain, Spanish Inquisition, 1492. That was the choice, right? Convert or get out by a certain day. And if you don't get out, and you don't convert, then you die. So conversion, right? In fact, the 19th century in Russia, under the Tsarist government, they took that page out of the playbook of the Spanish Inquisition, and this is what they did. They said, okay, we have Jews in Russia, right? We have Jews in Russia. Now, we have too many Jews. So this is what has to happen. A third have to convert. A third have to leave, and a third have to die. Right? So as he witnessed this. I mean, he saw this. He read history, Spanish Inquisition, the Christians, and Hitler. 15. He saw that for 1,500 years, the treatment of Jews and the beatings and killings of Jews was completely ineffective. Jews are a stiff-necked people. We are stubborn, and not many converted. Right? To our credit, we didn't give in, and we didn't convert. I mean, there's so many stories of Jews who, beginning in biblical times, Hannah and her 7 sons. But in the Spanish Inquisition, they had something called hora de fe, where if you didn't leave by a certain date, you either had to convert or die. So the people said, "We're not converting," and what they did it clandestinely. They practiced. They were called Marranos. They were called the coerced. And if they were caught, they were put to death. And in fact, you can either have a quick death, or you can be burnt at the Hora de Fe, which is in the town square. They built a wooden fire. They were very good at this, and they built I don't forget what the Boy Scouts call it. They built a fire edifice, and they tied the people alive. Hitler says, you know what? It's still not enough. And we're still suffering with the Jews. And he says even if Jews did convert, they're going to taint it. They're going to take Christianity. And besides, and this is probably one of the more important things, Hitler hated Christianity. He hated it. And the reason why he hated it is because what are the origins? Jesus was a Jew. Paul was a Jew, right? And so he said, it's a gutter religion, Christianity as well as Judaism. So he said, I only have one choice. I have to kill him. And the question that's asked, why didn't he just expel him? Because that was his original plan. All Jews have to get out of Germany. But he changed that to Jews getting out of Germany to men being killed. And then he changed that from men to women and children being killed. So the reason why he was not satisfied with just expelling them from the areas of the Reich, where the Reich conquered, is because his biggest fear was that the Jews would at some point return. Right? So you're kicked out of Germany, but 100 years from now, 200 years from now, whenever it is, the Jews would return. And once again, we would have the Jewish problem. And conversion, he also thought, by the way, that expelling a Jew, right, aside from them just coming back, expelling a Jew is now another society has to deal with them. Right? Believe me, I don't know what was so bad. I really don't know. It's illogical. It's evil, right? There's evil. Can you really, plot the mind of evil? So he said if he expels them, then other societies and other countries and other provinces have to deal with the Jews. So doesn't make sense. And they're also going to come back, right? So he decided that he came up with a solution: kill all. The final solution. The final solution to the Jewish problem. What we see, once again, I don't know why we were so problematic. Okay, so it's interesting to note that they have never found anything written from Hitler. Right? They never found anything written from Hitler written about the final solution. It was transmitted to his chief aides, the Nazis, the Heydrichs and the Himmlers and the Görings and etc. It was transmitted to them, and they transmitted it to their underlings. So it was completely off the books. It was under the table, right? And the way it was transmitted was that when each Nazi received these oral instructions, they saw it not as evil, but they saw it as the greatest act they could do. The greatest act. And there is a recorded speech. There is a recorded speech. He said it orally by Himmler. Himmler, I think, was in charge of the final solution. So there is a recorded speech by Himmler where he was speaking to the SS, and he says, and basically he was lauding them, he was praising them, and he says it's amazing how you have seen now hundreds of bodies laying side by side, thousands of bodies laying side by side. And he says, and you all stuck it out, except for the human weakness. And the Nazis that got sick over this and refused to, etc. And he says, and therefore you have kept our integrity, right? So the integrity was killing the Jew. That shows how you that was their paradigm of integrity. And then he further writes, he says, this is unwritten, and it will never be written, but it is an unwritten page of glory. And that's a recorded. So he basically inspired them. He says, fellas, you're doing the right thing. You're doing the right thing. And this, by the way, this is why they were able to take a human being and kill him, push him up against the electric fence, throw a baby in the air, and then try and spear it with his bayonet, right? It's because they didn't view it as evil. They viewed it as a mitzvah. This is a mitzvah. We're doing a good thing, and they did it with zeal. Now, the fact that there was an entire nation going to be wiped out, the goal was to wipe them out, was unprecedented. Right? It was unprecedented. They never had something like that before. And you had even the Armenian genocide, right? As we know, Armenians are really upset, the Jewish Holocaust, but we don't talk about the Armenian Holocaust, the Armenian genocide, which, by the term genocide is a new phrase. It was Raphael Lemkin. He was a Russian, and he called it genocide. But the Armenians, there was a Holocaust. They were killed and slaughtered. But what's interesting, the Turks slaughtered them Armenians in Armenia. If there was an Armenian living in Turkey, which is the seat of the Ottoman Empire, they were safe. They wanted it. The Ottoman Empire wanted to take over Armenians, and the resistance was death. Because you resisted, you deserved to die. But they weren't after every Armenian. If you were an Armenian living in a neighboring country, albeit not Armenia, you were safe. You're an Armenian living in Turkey, you were safe. Right? So this is what I mean by unprecedented. The Nazis viewed the Jew as the mortal enemy, and it was morally incumbent upon them to kill the Jew. And of course, it didn't help. It didn't help when you had the newspapers that were written and it always depicted Jews as the money-hungry, greedy, and take your money and loan you with high interest and ruin you, and it didn't help. And be careful, the Jew has viruses that he can viruses. Coronavirus, right? The Jew is infectious and will kill you, and you got to stay clear. And now the term Holocaust, was actually not mentioned during the war at all. It was only after, in the 1950s. And where they called it a Holocaust as opposed to genocide. And now, whenever we say Holocaust, we are referring to what the Nazis did to the Jews, the Nazis and their cohorts, because in Poland it's against the law to say what the Polish did to the Jews, their participation in the Holocaust, what the Polish. So therefore, we'll we'll talk about them first. The Poles, the Russians, Lithuanians. Holland was benign. Switzerland was, they didn't kill, but they took your money, and they refused. What Switzerland did? You couldn't, if you came to claim your money, which was in your bank account, right? And you came, they said, okay, ID. I don't have ID. The Nazis. I've been in a concentration camp for 3 years. No ID. Right? No. You can't have access. So the Swiss knew full well what they were doing, but and plenty of other countries. Now, what's interesting, the only other place that we can trace the Holocaust to is actually religious. It's actually Jewish, right? So it goes something like this: is that every day there were sacrifices that were offered on the altar in the Holy Temple, right? And there were some sacrifices, right, that were wholly burnt, and there were some sacrifices where it was split between the altar. Some were burnt, and some were given to the priests. There were others where some were burnt. Others where it was given to a little bit burnt, a third given to the priest, and a third, the peace offering, was given to the owner. He says the sacrifice that was not distributed, but was wholly burnt, was called the Holocaust, because it was wholly burnt. So and this is essentially what the Holocaust means to depict, that Hitler gassed us and then burnt us. So that's why they call it a Holocaust. So Hitler was and by the way, this answers a question. So yesterday when we spoke about the Einsatzgruppen, the people in charge of killing Jews and setting up the mechanism to kill Jews before Himmler. So the Einsatzgruppen, right, once again, they were intellectuals. I read something, I don't know if I said it yesterday. Maybe I did. So there were lawyers, and there were bankers, and there were dentists, etc. But out of the Einsatzgruppen, there was 11 of them had PhDs. It's insane. How could someone with a PhD act like a thug? So this answers the question, because they didn't view it as thuggery. They viewed it as a moral obligation, that it was immoral to let a Jew live and moral to kill the Jew and remove the scourge and the disease. They were like rats, vermin. So it was brilliant marketing on the Nazis' part to be able to convince countries, to be able to convince soldiers to do what they did. Just brilliant marketing. Even the term "the final solution" to the Jewish problem was brilliant. In other words, to say, guys, what you've tried to do before has not worked. This is it. This is the plan. This is the plan of all plans. And they didn't succeed. They did not succeed. We're still here. The greatest revenge we can take on Hitler is not kicking him in the head, even though I would love to do that. It's not kicking him in the head or hanging a Nazi or etc., even though it's quite enjoyable to watch. But the greatest revenge is that we're still here. And you know what? When a Jewish family have a baby, the revenge is compounded. And when this baby grows up and he or she has a baby, a Jewish baby, it's compounded further. So it's compounded revenge upon compounded revenge. The more we grow, the more we prosper, right? There's a reason why Hasidim have a bunch of kids, not just 2 kids and a dog. It's because they feel they have to replace the numbers, right? And because 50% of Jewry was killed by Hitler, 6 million. There was 6 million left in different countries or survivors, and we don't have that many more. What are we? We're 15 million all these years later. So, and that's because people were having multiple children, many multiple children. And so have 2 kids and a dog is basically just replaces you, or adds 1. And so the greatest revenge. And just a quick, once again, off the topic, is there are many reasons why Jews don't cremate. Many, many reasons. Not a lot of cremate. Right? There's the biblical reason, there's a philosophical reason, there's a practical reason, and there's a place to visit, etc. But one of the reasons is because Hitler chose this as the final end. Right? Going to burn the bodies as a final end, and that's what they did. By the way, in Babi Yar. When we spoke about Babi Yar yesterday, so when they were cleaning up, and they got bulldozers and pickup trucks and took these bodies, where did they take them to? They took them to a place and burnt them to ashes. So that's why we don't burn our bodies to ashes, and that's why we try and dissuade people. And even when somebody dies and they have it in their will, we still try and dissuade people, because it's not what Jews do. It's what Hitler does. It's what the Nazis do. We survived. Am Yisrael Chai. We're here, and we're here to stay. And to any rabid anti-Semite or neo-Nazi, right, our existence is literally an FU. That's and it makes us happy.